Hello and welcome to this Microsoft Learn Live. This is the show where we go through Learn modules on Microsoft Docs and Learn. Today we're going to explore Microsoft Teams, and this is the first one in 4 sessions. We're doing one each week. My name is Ståle Hansen. I'm the CEO of Cloudway. I'm a Microsoft Regional Director. I'm Microsoft MVP. And my focus, of course, is Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365. And I'm joined by Martina Grom. And tell us about yourself, Martina. We have kind of the same titles, you and me.
Yeah, that's right. So, hello, everybody. Martina Grom. I'm a Microsoft Regional and an MVP for Microsoft 365 and Azure as well. And I hope you will learn a lot with us in the next 90 minutes. And I'm very happy to be here as a co-presenter with you.
Yes, and our goal for today is to go through the initial module, explore Microsoft Teams, and make sure you are equipped to pass that module, understand it. But you also have the ability to ask your questions. We have 2 moderators joining us today. If you join aka.ms Learn TV, you're able to talk with Merethe Stave and Miguel Gómez, which both are MVPs. And introduce yourself. Say hi. Where are you from? And make sure you ask your questions about Microsoft Teams, and maybe they will bubble up some questions to us as well. So make sure you are joining that conversation. Martina, maybe you can walk us through the agenda for today.
Yeah. Happy to be here, and also happy to be joined by our co-presenters today. So what we will do today is we will explore Microsoft Teams and what it is and what we can learn here. So our first module is we will discuss Microsoft Teams core workloads, followed by how Microsoft 365 integrates as a service with Microsoft Teams. And the third part will be, we will introduce the Power Platform and how that integrates into Microsoft Teams as well. And then we look at the architecture of Microsoft Teams and dependent services so that it is clear what is Teams all about, how does it look like, and what we will see here. And our last part in this learning module is we will describe Microsoft Teams certified solutions. And this ranges from certified apps to certified devices. So, Ståle, don't forget, this is a live interactive session.
Absolutely. Make sure you ask your questions and interact with our moderators. So let's start with the core of Microsoft Teams, and let's start from the beginning. Let's bring everyone up to speed. What we can do with Microsoft Teams. So here's kind of the definition of Teams. This is a cloud-based communications platform that combines different services for collaboration, chat, meetings, callings, and files. And it's like kind of this single pane of glass where you can make sure you stay in contact, are productive when deploying and using this tool. And it brings me to the Gartner Magic Quadrant. I just want to mention that. And they do a review of different technologies every year. And they have one for UC as a service, unified communication as a service, because this set of features falls into that category. And Microsoft is in the leader quadrant for that, which means they are able to execute on their vision, and their vision is quite broad. So covering all these different features, and I think the main goal is to stay in context. when you are collaborating with your colleagues, having your meetings, sharing your files, and so on and so forth. Don't you agree, Martina?
Yeah, and I love those Gartner quadrants because it gives you an overview about different products in the market and where your favorite product stands here. So I see a lot of good things out of those comparison and also how we do that. So let's start. Explore our capabilities in Microsoft Teams. So Teams is the platform for communication and collaboration within Microsoft 365. It brings chat, calling, meeting, collaboration, and application integration into a single experience. We have one client, you can share files here, you can share data here, you can manage your tasks, collaborate on documents with people inside and also outside of your organization. Teams can simplify your work by integrating with the other apps and processes you use. So additionally, Microsoft Teams delivers the advanced security and compliance capabilities that enable safe and a trustworthy online collaboration. So you can really trust Teams. If we look at it, how from a client perspective it looks there are different pillars in Microsoft Teams. So one is the chat. Chat is the center of whatever you do in Teams. From individual chats with just one other person like me and Laurent, me and Miguel, me and Ståle, me and Merethe. We can also have a group chat and conversations in channels. That gives us a pure communication tool where we can instant communicate. Once in a chat, you can send messages that includes files, links, emojis, stickers, and GIF files. So you can also bring emotion into your written communication. And this is also quite important to have some smileys here, like we have today. And you can also have a different way to chat with people in Teams. You can have a private chat, a one-to-one chat with one another person, a group chat with a lot of people like we have it today. And you can also have channel messages. And channel messages is the second part within Microsoft Teams where the work gets done. So channel conversations, they are public for the team members in the channels. So you can start conversations and make announcements in one or multiple channels within a Microsoft team. And channel messages are chats with everyone in the team who pays attention to that channel. And you can also add mention people here. So what do you use, Ståle?
I, of course, use channel messages the most, and definitely trying to steer away from having processes in chat and moving them over to channel messages. And I think during today it will be clear why.
Yeah. So Microsoft Teams let you also quickly pull together a team with people inside and outside your organization. So you can chat with others to drive fast and inclusive conversations. You can securely share and co-author on documents. You can iterate on projects. To achieve its goal of efficiency through a flat hierarchy, Teams only provides different user roles. We have 3 roles here, which consists of, you can have owners of a team, you can have members of a team. So these are the internal organization-wide roles. And you can also add guests to teams if you want that. So for instance, if we look at that graphic, how it looks like, a team is a collection of people, content and tools surrounding different projects and outcomes within an organization. So 3 types of teams we have here. Org-wide teams. So they provide an automatic way for everyone in a small to medium organization to have a single team for collaboration. And currently the limitation for an org-wide team is no more than 10,000 users. So if you're a small or medium-sized business, you can have an org-wide team. Do you have an org-wide team at Cloudways, Ståle?
Yes, we are 9 people now, so I think we fit within that 10,000 limit. And
yeah,
so I think it's very important to have a place where you can communicate and collaborate and replace those internal emails.
Yeah, and also public teams, they are open and anyone within the organization can join. Public team is a team which everyone can discover within your organization and can join within your organization, and also can collaborate within your organization. And then the third type we have here is a private team. A private team consists only of invited users. So I create a private team, I only invite selected people, and no one within the organization can join the team without being invited or added by someone who is member in the team. And then if we go one step below that, are channels within a team. So a team is made up of channels. Their channels are collaboration spaces within a team where the actual work is done. So you have a general channel, but you can also add other channels like you want. So the standard channel is visible for every team member. You can't delete it. And the standard channel is also available for conversations that everyone within the team can read and answer and bring conversation in there. And then another type of channels are private channels. Private channels are similar to standard channels, but they restrict access to conversations, files, and apps to a limited subset of team members. So that means a private collaboration within a project or department. So you can split the members within a team and put them into a private channel. So for instance, it could be for the project members in here. And the rest with guests and the other members is in the wider team. And the third type we have of channels is shared channels. This is pretty new. So shared channels enable you to share channels with any user or group within Azure Active Directory, which identifies your organization. And that feature is currently still in development. So please go and check the roadmap for that to have when shared channels will be available. So do you use a lot of private channels, Ståle?
We try to avoid it and try to build the sharing boundaries around the team so that everyone who are a member of the team should have access to the information there. But I think a very good scenario for private channel is, for instance, if you're running a project and you have a steering group which you communicate with, where the project manager is communicating with the steering group, and they have like the internal conversations and their internal documents. I think that's a very good use case and example for a private channel.
Yeah, that's true. So also what you see here from a teams type, a team can be dynamic or project-based work. So you can create teams for running projects. You can create teams for your departments, or they can reflect the internal structure of your organization. And also all data within a team, such as conversations, files, notes, and the cross channels are only visible for the members of the team. At the top of each channel, you will find tabs, which are basically links to your favorite files, to your favorite apps and services. So also you see that here in the picture. And we have apps and workflows. So Teams is designed to enable this new way of working. So imagine your Teams client is the place you are during your day, when you work on your projects, when you work with different apps and so on. Teams enables users to integrate everyday work apps into a single place for a unified work experience. So users can add apps to a tab in a channel. They can chat, they can have their meetings there, the calendar is here, and those tabs serve almost like bookmarks that users no longer need to jump between different apps, client and services. I heard that a lot from my customers. Oh, why do I need to open so many browser tabs and so on? And now we have a unified experience within Microsoft Teams. And then we have various apps which users can add to their Teams channels and personal view to help get things done. As a Teams administrator, if you are one, you can manage apps, you can also manage connectors and bots that are available across all team members. So you can simply configure your Microsoft Teams experience in your organization. Teams also provides an app store. And within the App Store, you can add Team Store apps, which are provided by Microsoft or other vendors, or you can also integrate your low-code solutions apps. With Microsoft Power Platform, everyone is a developer, and you can build your own simple apps, which you can integrate into Microsoft Teams. And then the last part is professional developer apps. So you can also create custom apps in that fits your organizational needs. So for instance, an HR app or whatever you want to add here. Are you using apps a lot?
Yes, we are using both for solving specific customer issues and specifically for giving access to change stuff without having admin access. So that we can have like governance, or we can create stuff, or maybe even guest access governance that we provide through apps, and then have centralized services that actually have access in the environment.
Great. So what about meetings? This is your turn.
Yes, meetings. And as I mentioned, Microsoft also in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, a leader in the Magic Quadrant for meetings as well, which means they have a vision, they're able to execute on it. And there are 3 types of meetings within Microsoft Teams. And again, the goal is to keep you in context when you're switching between meetings, having your back-to-back meetings, and collaborating before, during, and after meetings as well. And of course, Microsoft is very focused on like the new normal, hybrid work, hybrid meetings, making sure that you're able to cater for a virtual meeting attendees with physical meeting attendees and those on the go. So we have the regular Teams meeting where you have audio, video, screen sharing. You can even add polls, you can take notes, and you can even have now up to 49 people on the screen at the same time, and this may even increase over time. I'm really during the pandemic, I'm surprised actually at how quickly Microsoft adapted and added new features to the platform, such as now that you can have 1,000 people in a Teams meeting, and you can even have overflow meeting, moving more over to the type of live events where you have this like one-to-many conversation where people don't have to join a Teams meeting, they can just stream the meeting, and that's typically good for town hall meetings, trainings, or those kind of scenarios. And the third type is Teams webinars, where you actually get to have a sign-up page even for joining that meeting. So that's good both for internal and external calls where you can have a webinar. And now with all the different layouts that you have as well, it can look really, really good. Have you been running any webinars or tested the webinar module, Martina?
Yeah, so I'm currently using a lot live events with some of our customers and so on, but we are also looking into webinars to make it more interactive, because a team live event is presenter mode and the audience, which can bring questions to you. And the webinar could be a little bit more interactive, seeing the chat, bringing up emojis, and so on. But I like both scenarios. It really depends on the use case.
Yep. And all these scenarios are continuously being developed. And check out the roadmap for like upcoming features for all these scenarios. Next is calls within Teams. And you have two flavors of calls within Teams. And both of them are actually called Teams Phone by Microsoft. The first one is like Teams to Teams call, where you do an ad hoc call between me and Martina, or me and Merethe, or me and Martin. And that's where like we connect and have a call, and we can even escalate that call, add more people. We can start chatting. We can share our screen as well. So you can have a simple one-to-one call. So as I mentioned, it can be a group call, and typically those are ad hoc, and you can even call a group of people at the same time as well. The second type, yeah.
I have one question for you. Can I also have a PST1 call, so a landline call?
Yes. That's a great question, Martina. And because the second flavor is that you break down those technology barriers and are able to call anyone. I got asked a question recently, why do we need telephony within Teams in today's information worker scenario? Because the mobile client is awesome. You have so many features available on on the mobile client. Excuse me. And people have the mobile client on all the time, so I can call you at any point. But still, there are other personas out there as well. Use cases where you maybe are sitting as a salesperson and are reaching out to a lot of different people. You don't know what kind of technology they are using. So breaking down the technology barrier, being able to call any device in the world from the same platform that you use for all your collaboration, that's the business case for calling within Teams. And then you can, of course, extend that into hunt groups, call centers even, and make sure that you can have an enterprise-grade telephony system directly into your collaboration environment. That's PSTN calling within Microsoft Teams. And Microsoft said that they have 80 million active users making calls every day. And
that's impressive.
That's very impressive. But we need to break it down a bit, though, because they said using Teams Phone, which is both Teams to Teams calls and Teams to PSTN calls. And of course, most of them are Teams to Teams calls, but it's also very impressive from a telephony solution as well. And we deploy Teams as enterprise-grade telephony solutions today. And we can solve them in all the scenarios using Operator Connect, calling plans, and direct routing. Moving over to security. Martina, you mentioned that this is a secure platform. What makes it a secure platform? Well, of course, it's built on Azure Active Directory. So the security you build around your identity, such as conditional access, multi-factor authentication, but also when you enroll your device, make it compliant so that you're not asked about multi-factor authentication all the time, that plays into Teams as well. And of course, there is encryption of data at rest, and it's encryption of data in transport. Recently, Microsoft introduced end-to-end encryption, so which means that you can have one-to-one call, which is end-to-end encrypted. So it's also encrypted, so no one has access to it. And that is coming to meetings as well. So follow that space. Other security mechanisms you have within Teams is safe links and safe attachments, which means that documents and links are scanned before you open them, when you save them, and when you share them. So that if a link is malicious, or it wasn't malicious but is now, that will be captured by safe links and safe attachments, the same type of technology you have in email as well. And then other activities are meeting safety controls. You can tune your meetings, who has access to them, who can do what. And then Teams is part of Cloud App Security. So your larger security posture around applications. And that leads us over to compliance, Martina.
So, and if we look at compliance, it's kind of a very good story if we look from a compliance perspective into Microsoft Teams. And you know, we in the European space and all over the world, privacy matters for many people here and also for our organizations. And with the compliance scenario we have within Microsoft Teams, we can make sure that our service runs on our rules and with our compliance regulations. So you have different flavors here. So for instance, you can add sensitivity labels to your teams. So it could be that you say, okay, I have a strictly confidential team and every content here, guests are not allowed and so on. So I can add that. Then retention and deletion policies. So consider the use case where you have, I need to keep all content of that team due to regulations for at least 10 years. So no one can delete anything. Or the other way around, I need to make sure that the content of this team is deleted after 3 years. So you can have it both ways. And then we also have data loss prevention in here. Data loss prevention makes just sure that you do not overshare content accidentally, like credit card information, social security numbers, or anything else. So data loss prevention is also a very big item here. With e-discovery within Microsoft 365, you can discover cases. So if you have a legal requirement and you need some e-discovery investigation, it's right here within Microsoft 365. And then we have communication compliance. Communication compliance is pretty new, since 1 year, still new. Just means, okay, you can also look at how content is communicated within your Microsoft Teams environment. And this can cover insider risk, things like workplace harassment or other topics, all could be covered within communication compliance scenarios. Information barriers is a scenario where you can make sure that two persons or two groups in your tenant cannot communicate to each other. So consider, it could be a scenario where you want to restrict people from communicating to each other. It could be the retail and the trading organization which are not allowed to talk to each other because of insider trade scenarios or anything else. And then there's the last item here is compliance recording. Due to compliance requirements, it could be a requirement in your organization that you have to record specific meetings in there and so on. So you see a lot of compliance stuff is covered here. So Ståle, on your turn, how does Microsoft Teams integrate with Microsoft 365?
Well, the short answer, it does. and it turns out that Teams is built on Microsoft 365, which will become more apparent during today when we dive more into the core settings of Teams as well and the architecture. But it's integrated with your collaboration tools within Microsoft 365. And we will go through how they integrate with the different tools now. First off, Outlook. It integrates with Outlook that you can share to Outlook and share from Outlook. And you also have the opportunity to get an Outlook reminder if you have missed activity. Personally, I turn that off in my main tenant, in my main environment. But that's really useful when I'm a guest in a different environment, because I'm not always logged in there, and it's great to get a reminder that someone tried to reach out to me and want to have a conversation with me or share some information, that they get a reminder on that over email. And I think the main purpose, especially to share to teams, is that you can share a conversation to teams to stop those email conversations. Because it turns out that email is a messaging system and not a conversation system. So moving those over to those conversations over to teams and say, hey, I understand that we are talking about and discussing this right now, but let's move it over to Teams. It's a better platform for us to collaborate, and then maybe end up and share back to Outlook when we have a final answer, for instance. What's your experience with that, Martina?
So the scenario you're currently describing is email trees, and everyone is guilty to building and growing email trees of us. And that just means some types of conversations just are better in a direct conversation within Microsoft Teams than building up and growing within Outlook. And also consider notifications are quite important, but do not over-notify people. Probably they already read your email. You do not have to ping them separately in Teams and said, have you read my email, or call people and so on.
Yeah, have you seen my email? I sent it like 2 seconds ago. What's your thoughts on it?
What's your opinion?
Comment? What's your opinion on that? It's like, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, that's true. So, and if we look at my part here in SharePoint, so within Microsoft, you can add published SharePoint pages or Microsoft lists as a tab in a Teams channel, like you see here in the screen. So SharePoint pages let users share ideas using images, videos, links, documents, content, and so on. And SharePoint lists or Microsoft lists are a great way to collaborate on content and data. So team members can view pages, edit lists, and add comments in the Microsoft Teams tabs. So add the SharePoint tab in your team to quickly paste any page, news post, or lists directly from a published SharePoint sites. And the next part is what we see here is Yammer. And Yammer is, with Yammer, you can add org-wide communication directly into your Teams environment. So you can pin your communities app directly into Teams, like you see here on the left. And that allows team members to follow and share conversations in the Yammer conversation right from Teams. So they do not have to switch into the browser. They do not have to switch in any other app. They have Yammer right away. And also when a team member goes to the Yammer tab, they are authenticated again by Yammer. So they only see the Yammer content which they have access to. So they only see their communities and so on. And the next point here is Viva Connections. And Viva Connections is pretty new. It was launched in February this year. And Viva Connections is also an app you can pin right into your Teams navigation bar on the left. And it's a company-branded experience that brings together relevant news, conversations, and so on. So consider Viva Connections as an employee experience app. And this is also something which is quite useful, like you see here. So, and our next topic here is Microsoft Forms. And forms, I love forms. So I use it all the time. And it's really a good replacing to query people and so on. And I use it in meetings and so on. And forms makes it possible for users to access directly in Microsoft Teams. So you can easily set up a form within your tab. You can create a new form to collect responsive. You can add existing forms to collect responsive, or you can simply show your survey results within your team. And you can also create notifications of your form so that everyone in your team says, okay, we got new responsive. Can you have a look at that? And so on. And I also like the experience within a meeting to just query people during the meeting and make a quick poll on what have you seen, do you like it, do you have any suggestions, and so on. So I like forms a lot here. Are you using forms?
Of course. That's a great way to get feedback. Sometimes you ask questions inside an organization. Excuse me. But you want to have like this anonymous response, this honest response as well, and forms is a great way to gather that.
Yeah, and also you can also create your own tech cloud within a form query. So this is pretty new, and I'm really excited about that. Another topic is Planner and Tasks. So Planner is a task management tool that small teams of individuals can use to manage their work within a team. And they are associated with visually and openly with the rest of the team. So having Planner as a tab within your Microsoft team enables the team to work more on tasks and so on. So everyone knows what you can do here. And what I like here is task in teams. So you get a new unified view of your personal and team's tasks. So you see all your tasks which are assigned to you across your teams and so on. And also you can sync your planner tasks into your to-do app. So you can have your tasks on the way on your mobile device and use those tasks as well.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that because I think, as you mentioned, a common misconception is that the people think that tasks in Teams are tasks in Teams, but it turns out it's Planner and Microsoft To Do merged together. So it's actually a view of all your tasks. So if you work with them in Planner, it will show in the tasks up in Teams. If you work with the tasks in To Do, it will show in the tasks up in Teams. So which means that if you want to have that experience when you're working with tasks in Microsoft 365, use To Do for individual tasks and use Planner for group-based tasks, and then that will trickle through the system. And also, I think a new feature now is the ability to send a channel message as a task, and add it either to your personal To Do or your planner or a planner, which means I love that. I hope it will come to mobile as well.
Yeah, and also back to Outlook, you can also convert a message in Outlook into a task in To Do. So it really integrates from different spaces.
Absolutely.
And then we have an enterprise video service where people in your organization can upload, view, and share videos. And this is Microsoft Streams. So user can collaborate using video by adding a Microsoft Stream channel or video as a tab in Microsoft Teams as well. And also users can watch and videos in Teams, such as meeting recordings or live events. So you can use Stream video service within Microsoft Teams as well. And then we have our Office documents, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So you can also add those document files as a tab in Microsoft Teams. So consider you have a workbook, everyone within the team needs to have open in Excel and so on. You can simply add it as a tab in your Microsoft team. So files which are stored in a team file library are accessible for every member of the team. And users and the team members can co-edit Word, PowerPoint, Excel documents, or comment on Visio files. So co-authoring within the Microsoft Teams client works pretty well. I use it all the time. I get a little bit lazy in opening the desktop application. I just do it directly from my Teams application or within the browser. And
and I think co-authoring and collaborating documents in that way, that's like one of the main business cases for succeeding with Teams and collaboration. Because if you're not using that, you are missing out, right? If you're using a file server or you're just using documents and collaborating on them individually, you're missing out. So be able to co-author on documents through Teams. That's one of the main business cases.
Yeah. And also, one of the knowledge sharing tools is OneNote for me. So that means within Microsoft Teams, users can interact with a notebook by visiting the OneNote tab in a channel in Teams. So most of the time, I use it instead of the wiki in a Microsoft team. And I like OneNote because it's here. Every new team gets its own OneNote notebook. And you can just add it as a tab here, and everyone within the team can have access to that OneNote notebook and have it directly here. And then we have Microsoft Power Platform. And we will look here in the next section how the Teams integration work within the Power Platform. So if we look at that, we have business problems which increasingly require modern digital solutions. So within the integration of Microsoft Power Platform apps into Teams, organizations can streamline business processes, respond to changing business needs more rapidly to drive greater collaboration, and create and share custom solutions to be more productive. So with a low-code platform, anyone with a great idea can build a digital app. So every one of us is a developer now. And Microsoft Power Platform helps users to accelerate their development with low-code tools to analyze data using Power BI, build custom apps using Power Apps, automate processes using Power Automate, and create intelligent bots using Power Virtual Agents more quickly than ever. So, for instance, we in our organization, we made some very simple Power Apps which we could integrate into Microsoft Teams. And it was really beneficial for all of our users because we simply could try it out how it looks like. And you can embed Power BI reports in your Microsoft Teams workspace. So if you're a report person and you need to provide the dashboard with the latest numbers of your organization, you can simply integrate it into Microsoft Teams as well. And with the Power Automate flow from any message, you can use adaptive cards, add your bots with a Power Virtual Agent to other team members in your organization. So you see, we have a lot information in here, and we can also have Power Apps directly integrated in Teams. Have you built any solutions by yourself?
Not so much for Power Apps myself, for personal use, but we definitely use them on organizational level.
Yeah. So what we see here, Power Apps provides a rapid low-code development environment for building custom apps for business needs. So you have services, you have connectors, you have a scalable data service and an app platform with Microsoft Dataverse. And to give you some examples what a Power App in Microsoft Teams can do, you can use the Power Apps tab for Microsoft Teams to embed a Canvas or model-driven app as a tab in a team channel. So directly your users can go to that app, provide the data, and go from there. You can also pin a Canvas app to the Microsoft Teams app navigation bar, which you find on the left in your Teams client as a Teams personal app. And you can also use Power Apps in Teams to create Canvas apps within Teams backed by Dataverse for Teams. And how does it look like? You see it here. So pinning the app, adding it to our environment, and also building your app directly in Teams. And you see, it's really simple. What is Power Automate in Teams? Power Automate in Teams let users create workflows. So how is that working?
So I would say Power Automate is Outlook rules for Microsoft 365. And if you are using Outlook rules a lot today, try to see if you can move them over to Power Automate, because there you can do more. Sorry. With attachments, you can do store them in OneDrive. You can build some processes around them, and that's what Power Automate does. And you can have it as an app in your navigation bar in Teams, and you can access them directly. And there you will actually see a differentiation between like your Teams connected flows and your rest of your flows, and you can even tune them or even create them directly in the Teams client. And this really shows that it enables like everyone to automate their processes. And I think the strength in this is that you enable the people that are actually sitting on the processes to automate something themselves and see if they can work smarter, instead of like requesting something from IT, because then they need to like build a business case for it, and maybe it takes a long time. But now you empower everyone to see if they can automate their processes. So I think it's really really powerful. And I think a good example is that you can have a process that does something to an email, and even maybe post something to a Teams channel as a message that people can interact with, or streamline approval flows. And I think this is really strong for those financial sectors where you have a lot of approval flows, or maybe you have some flows within a department that's very specific for them that they can automate. And this is what it looks like. And best of all, if you have Teams in in dark mode, this supports dark mode. So thumbs up for me. Next is Power Virtual Agents, cool, Martina. Yeah, yeah. I don't like brightness.
Brightness, yeah. So I'm light on the day and dark in the night. So I'm switching between dark and light mode.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So another option here is Power Virtual Agents. So anyone can create a powerful chatbot as a guided no-code graphical interface without the need of data scientists or developers. So you can build your own bot, a Martina bot, a Ståle bot, whatever you want. So this minimizes IT effort, which is required to deploy and maintain a custom solution. And you can also maintain your own bot with, for instance, if you are an HR employee, he can create a bot that can answer questions about vacation, time off, benefits, and so on. So it's really simple to integrate Power Virtual Agents as bot scenarios here. So what you can do, as some examples, you can look into the bot, you can create it, you can test it, and you can add the bot, and you have bots that take action on someone's behalf. So how does it look like here from that scenario? You see here, this is the bot, and here you can edit, and then you can create the bot flow here. So you say, okay, when coffee happens, Martina wakes up, or when it's evening, she switches to dark mode. So it could be that kind of user flow in here, which can be designed by every person within the bot. And our next thing is Power BI in Teams. So Power BI enables users to connect and transform data into accessible visualization seamlessly. So you can create your own Power BI dashboard. You can publish it within your Teams client. I see that a lot in data-driven teams where I say, okay, I need a scenario here. I need to know what the results are, and you can just add it to your Teams environment. Also, you can get notifications about activity from Power BI when there is a recent change, or anything else which can be enabled from there. And then behind all of that is Microsoft Dataverse for Teams. So Microsoft Dataverse for Teams is built on Microsoft Dataverse. It provides a relational data storage, rich data types, enterprise-grade governance, and one-click solution deployment to the Microsoft Teams app. And that means a modern Dataverse for Teams is a built-in low-code data platform for Microsoft Teams that let user build custom apps, bots, flows in Microsoft Teams by using Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents, and also Power Automate. If your organization is required to have extra capabilities, such as more granular control for security and governance, or capacity beyond the approximately 1 million rows a Dataverse for Teams environment can contain, Dataverse for Teams can be upgraded to Microsoft Dataverse. So you see here, you have endless capabilities here with Microsoft Dataverse, and you can scale out if you have bigger requirements for your environment. We have 4 types of Dataverse. It's apps, it's workflows, it's chatbots, and we also have dashboards. And how does it look like in the backend? And you see here, you have a very powerful governance solution. So you can look at your Dataverse and you can say, okay, do we need that? Do we still use that? And can we maintain it here, or do we need to extend it? So, time to test your knowledge. So if we look at the first question, and I will just read it here. So Patty Fernandez is the T admin for Contoso. The HR department wants to create an automated service to answer the frequently asked questions from employees. Which of the following tools should Patty recommend to achieve the goal? We have option A, she can build a Power App. We have also option B, she can use Power Virtual Agents and let a bot do the work. Or C, she can use Power BI. So what's your opinion?
I think there are multiple ways to solve this, and it depends on like how advanced you want to do it. But typically, like, keep it simple, right? And try to solve it first, and then look at how you can expand it. So what's your thoughts on this, Martina?
So I'm the kind of person, I want to automate as much as possible and standardize it. So I would go for a bot.
So the question then is, where can you then produce that bot, right?
Exactly. So how does it look like? So take your choice, 3, 2, 1, and we see it's Power Virtual Agent. So we can do that with a bot, and we can make the solution work here. So back to you. How does the Teams architecture look like? Architecture is such a big word.
Yes. And now is where we dive into some of the details around Microsoft Teams, because we said that Teams is built on Microsoft 365. As you have seen, we are accessing the Power Apps, the Power Platform. We are accessing Forms. We are accessing so many different tools from the Microsoft 365 platform. And I think, as you said, Martina, that Teams connects Microsoft 365. Before we had Teams, it was like kind of a disconnected experience. Suddenly you like discovered a new website where you can do forms, or suddenly you discovered that you had Power Automate, or even some tasks, right? They were like, you can discover stuff. Now it's connected. And the way for Teams to be connected is that it's based on Microsoft 365 infrastructure. So part of introducing Teams was introducing now called Microsoft 365 groups, Earlier, it was called Office 365 groups. And even before that, it was called Outlook groups, because that's where it originated, to have that like a new shared space where you could collaborate and so on and so forth. So every time you create a team, and this illustration is what I use when I try to explain how Teams is creating infrastructure within your Microsoft 365. So every time you create a team, you create a Microsoft 365 group, which it then creates an Exchange mailbox, a shared Exchange mailbox, a shared calendar, and even in SharePoint, it creates a SharePoint team site. That's where you store your files. In Outlook, it's where you store your messages, and this also plays into compliance, which we will touch on later. But what you see here then is that Teams is built on existing technology. So we are not reinventing technology. We are just using like the best of Microsoft 365 to accomplish the base capabilities within Microsoft Teams. And I also want to illustrate here that OneDrive, for instance, it accesses your personal OneDrive. It's not a new OneDrive or a different OneDrive or something like that. It's your personal OneDrive. And the same with calling capabilities. So if you are enabled for telephony within Teams, you will get that feature. So it both collects like your personal settings and your shared settings, such as SharePoint and Exchange. And of course, if you're using OneNote, those OneNote notebooks, they are stored in that shared SharePoint team site, which you get access to as part of Microsoft Teams. I think this illustrates this really well, and just make sure that if people are creating teams and there's only like one person member of that team, that's a lot of infrastructure for just one person or two people or something like that, right? So you use with great power comes a great responsibility, right? So think about that. Looking at the infrastructure, where is stuff produced? So this illustrates that Teams is a connected service. The chat is using a chat service where it deposits the chats in either your personal mailbox, if it's one-to-one chat or group chat, or the mailbox of the team if it's a channel conversation. So it's a team service producing the capability, but at rest, the data is stored in known technology. Looking at meetings, for instance, or let's start with files. Files, again, if it's a one-to-one chat, that's stored in OneDrive. But the moment you use a shared space, a channel conversation, share a file, that's stored in a shared SharePoint library. So at rest, that data is stored in known technology, which means that you can use those capabilities, sharing capabilities, or governance capabilities, or compliance capabilities on those files. Meetings and calls, they are produced by a rendering service. And regardless of where your tenant is located in the world, so for instance, we are in Europe, and our tenant is created in the US. So because we are in a US company, and that's where like our tenant is located. But even though Martina and I are having a call in Europe, our call actually gets routed to a local rendering service, a relay service, so that the call stays local, even though the tenant itself is stored in the US and have its data located in the US, which means that we get the best quality, the optimal quality when we have those meetings. So a power tip for you, a super tip: if you're joining a meeting and there are people from all around the world, for you to get the best functionality and the best quality, join the meeting first. Because that's the relay service that will be used for that meeting. So but keep in mind that, because yes, you will connect to your local service, but the meeting will be produced locally to that person who joins first. Even though it was a US person who invited to the meeting will be produced and rendered, I would say, relayed through a local rendering service. So there's a difference between having the meeting and storing the data, because the data will, of course, then end up in where your tenant stores its data. So that's like the dependencies for teams and the core architecture. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that, Martina?
So I'm just wondering, where's all the data stored within Microsoft Teams, because it's a big, and it's dependent on SharePoint and Exchange. But where is my data actually?
Yes, and that's a great question. So this overview details that. So messages are deposited to Exchange. Images are deposited to Exchange. Files are either in SharePoint or OneDrive. Voicemail are deposited into your Exchange. Meeting recordings are either in OneDrive, if it's a one-to-one meeting, or but if it's a channel meeting, though, then that meeting will get stored in the channel's SharePoint environment. Calendars come from Exchange. Contacts sync with Exchange, and then telemetry is Microsoft Data Warehouse. That's where that gets produced. So hopefully this gives you an overview that Teams reuses Microsoft 365 and don't reinvents Microsoft 365.
So it's like Microsoft Teams is on top of the other core services, which are SharePoint, OneDrive, and Exchange.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thanks. Thanks for the explanation of the architecture. So to make a short summary about that, how does it look like from governance, security, and compliance for Microsoft Teams on the slides here? So we have Teams architecture, and we've seen that this architecture enables data governance, security, and compliance capabilities. You can protect Teams data with various security and compliance features in Microsoft 365, like we have said before. This protects against leakage, loss of business data, and it also supports compliant business processes when discovering sensitive business data. So you see, this all comes together, and it's protected within Microsoft 365. And what are the limits of Microsoft Teams, Ståle?
Yes. As we said, Teams is built on specifically Exchange and SharePoint. And if you're looking at those limits, like for files, you should look into limits for SharePoint. Like how many files can you store, how large can they be, how long the paths can be, and so on and so forth. But Teams also has its own limits. Like you mentioned, Martina, that an org-wide team can be 10,000 users. But you have 1,000 team you can be a member of. And if you are a member of 1,000 teams, then maybe you need to rethink that.
That's true.
But for instance, I think this is something a lot of people are wondering. How many channels can I have within a team? And it's 200. And that includes deleted channels as well. So if you're really good at creating a lot of channels, for instance, we have a customer team within our tenant where we have a channel per customer. But then maybe we need to look into archiving and maybe deleting some of the very inactive channels, then, for instance, to clean it up. So even though it includes deleted channels, those channels get cleaned up after 30 days so that you can create even more channels over time. So a big tip has always been to never rename a channel, because then it won't rename like the backend SharePoint service. But at Microsoft Ignite, that they announced actually that you now will get that option as well to when you rename a channel, you actually rename the backend SharePoint service. So this is always in development. And my recommendation to you is search for limits and specifications for Microsoft Teams and regularly check back on this, because it changes a lot over time.
That's true. So, and we look now at Microsoft 365 groups, because this is really how important it is, and to understand it also from an architectural perspective. So think Microsoft 365 groups is the cross-application membership service in Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 is an object within Azure Active Directory, and they can be created directly from the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. They can be created directly out of Microsoft Teams. They can be created directly out of Outlook, and so on. And also think about that. This is the base service for everything around. So consider, if you create a team, you create a Microsoft 365 group. If you create a planner, you create a Microsoft 365 group. If you create Yammer, you create a Microsoft 365 group. So everything is in here. And also from a membership model, think about that every member within the group is part of your Microsoft team, your Outlook group, your Yammer community. And when we check that, is what those Microsoft 365 groups provide is you have a group of people access to a collection of shared resources. So those resources can include an Outlook inbox, a shared Outlook inbox where everyone can look at, a shared calendar for team members, a SharePoint document library. You can have a planner in here. You can have OneNote, like we mentioned before. Power BI is also part of that. And also, if you create a Yammer community, you will get the Microsoft 365 group. But Yammer communities cannot be Microsoft Teams at the same time. So this is an either-or decision. If you create a team, the team is created from Microsoft Teams, and in the backend, you always get a Microsoft group. So look at that, and also I think it's really important to understand the group's architecture, because also when you create a Microsoft group, you have to decide, is it a public group or is it a private group? And the public group means every user in your organization has access to the public group and can join the group, can read the files, and so on. If you create a private group, content in this group is private for the members of the group, and it's not discoverable. Very often I get asked by my questions, oh, I see files I shouldn't have access to. And my first look then is this file stored in a public group? Because then it's clear. From the access control, everyone in the organization has access to the groups. So how does it look like from a membership and role perspective? So you do not have to manually assign permissions to each of the shared resources. So you do not have to add permissions for SharePoint, for Planner, or for everything. Everything is managed out of Microsoft 365 groups. So that means you have a couple of rows here. So you have owners, you have members and guests. And that means a best practice, what I would recommend is, if you create a team, always assign 2 owners to the team. Because that helps you when people move on or they go into a different department, they are no longer owner of the group, avoid ownerless teams. And then you have members. And members can access everything in the group, but they can't change group settings. So an owner can delete the group, he can archive the group, and so on. A member can contribute in the group, but they can't do those kind of things. And then you have external access, and this is guests. So group guests are members who are from outside your organization, and it's a great way to collaborate with groups guests in your own team. In this table, we see the differences between Microsoft 365 groups and other types of groups. Very often I get the question, what's the difference between a distribution group, a security group, an email-enabled security group, and the Microsoft 365 group? Always remember, Microsoft 365 groups are born in the cloud. You can't create them on premises and sync them. It's a real cloud service in here. And always consider, if you go into membership services, that you go with Microsoft 365 groups. The next topic is we want to describe how Microsoft Teams works together with SharePoint and OneDrive. So those are the primary content services in Microsoft 365, like Exchange. So Microsoft Teams uses SharePoint and OneDrive for content collaboration. Teams files are stored in SharePoint sites, chat files are stored in OneDrive, and so on. And also your recording are stored within OneDrive or your SharePoint channel. So each team in Microsoft Teams has a SharePoint team site associated. So files shared within a conversation are automatically added to the document library. And this is quite convenient. You just upload it in the channel and it automatically gets uploaded to your SharePoint site and can be shared from there. So also, if you look from a permission perspective on that, you see permissions and file security options, which are set in SharePoint, are automatically reflected within Teams. So with the membership service we have here, we get access to the files automatically. If we look at the public team, the SharePoint site is provisioned as with the rights everyone except external users. So that means everyone in the organization can access the SharePoint site. It isn't displayed in Teams for people who aren't members for the team, but they can access the content on the SharePoint team site using the URL which is provided for the SharePoint team site. So we see here, we have a lot of topics here with SharePoint and OneDrive. A standard channel includes the general channel, which can't be deleted, just remember that. Has a folder within the default SharePoint team site for document storage. So you can upload any document in here and then sync it back with your OneDrive client and have the files also offline with you. And a private channel has a folder in a selected SharePoint document library as its own SharePoint team site. So it isn't within the default team site, it's a separate one, and also the access rights are separated from there. So look at it from a perspective. This is a short summary, how it looks like from the access control. And you see here, each team in Microsoft Teams has a SharePoint team site associated with it. OneDrive, my favorite tool. So every user in OneDrive gets his Teams chat files stored in there. So in a one-to-one chat or in one-to-many chats, we can share documents and files and so on, and they get stored here as well. So recordings for non-channel meetings are also stored in your OneDrive account. And to give you a pro tip, those files will be removed after 60 days because we all learned a meeting which was 2 months ago has a low probability to be watched again. And also, it's really important that your guests do not have access by default to the meeting recordings. So you have to share it separately with them, and you have also scenarios in here. Are you using OneDrive a lot? Are you sharing stuff through OneDrive?
Yes, sometimes when I'm so I do a lot of workshops, and when I share from those workshops, share slides and recordings and so on. I share that from OneDrive. And by default, it gets like a temporary access to it so that the link will be removed in time. And also, since meetings are stored as a file, as an MP4 file, I can just easily copy it and move it around. So that I can either move it to a team as a channel in a channel conversation and SharePoint, or I can move it to and share it with the audience as well. So yes, I use that a lot, and of course for my personal files.
Great. So the next topic would be our next knowledge check. But I think we can skip it for now, so I will briefly skip over that, because I think we have the knowledge check in your learning module, which you can access online and just go through it and work from there. So
yeah, and the answer is like super obvious. We've been talking about that a lot now, so you should know this.
A lot.
So next is Microsoft Teams with Exchange. And we have established that information gets stored in Exchange. So emails sent to a team, chat messages are stored in your personal mailbox, channel messages, and meeting information. So Exchange is heavily used within Microsoft Teams. Also, profile pictures are actually that can be confusing because sometimes profile pictures are picked up from SharePoint, sometimes it's from Exchange, but for Teams specifically, it's Exchange, and that's also where you can check out your voicemail and so on. You can play them off in Teams, but you can also find them in Exchange. And this is a difficult topic. What about hybrid? So my mailbox is on premises, but my Teams is, of course, a cloud service, as we have established. And I would want to share one thing with you, and that is, if your mailbox is on premises, you have set up hybrid with Microsoft 365, and then you can actually access your calendar and do that as part of the deployment, and nothing gets stored of those meetings in Microsoft 365 because the Teams service will access through FreeBusy your on-premises calendar data. And I described this in a blog post. So if you want to dive into this and look at the flow, just search for my blog, msunify.net, and can you lock down your hybrid Exchange and still use Teams calendar and Outlook mobile? Yes, you can. So check out that, and because it's a long, detailed explanation, but the short answer, we can actually provide full calendar capabilities, even though your mailbox is on premises. And let's dive into the certified solutions. There's a whole ecosystem around Microsoft Teams. To expand on and extend on the functionality. So Microsoft has their own certification programs for peripheral devices, for integrated solutions, and so on. So let's touch on this. The first is Microsoft 365 App Compliance Program, Martina, and I understand you have some experience with that.
Yeah, so we went through the program with some applications we have built just to see how it works here. So going to, if you have an application, there is a specific app compliance program. It's a 3-tier approach to app security and compliance, and each tier builds up on the next, offering as a layered program to give users the confidence they need while using apps in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So first of all, if you publish an app for the Microsoft App Store for Teams to be provided in here, you go into publisher verification. So this helps admins and users understand the authenticity for app developers integrating with the Microsoft Identity Platform. So you know who built the app, where the data is located, what is used, and so on. So that means when an app is marked as publisher verified, the publisher has verified their identity using a Microsoft Partner Network account and is associated with a Microsoft Partner Network account with the application registration. So you know, this is an app I can trust, it's built by Microsoft Partner, and so on. The publisher itself can provide the publisher attestation. And that means a developer can share general data handling, security and compliance information of the app which is published here. Very often I get questions, oh, this app requires too much access to the Teams app. And publisher attestation can provide you more detailed information why that happens. And after you have done that, you can go into a Microsoft 365 certification. And that means this offers assurance and confidence to organizations that data and privacy are secured and protected when using Microsoft Teams app. For the publisher, you get a pen test, you get a security task, you have to describe the app, and so on. So as soon as you have a Microsoft 365 certification for your app, it's like the gold standard for your Microsoft Teams app. But there's more than that. It's not only about apps, it's also about devices.
Oh yeah, devices. And the thing with Microsoft Teams, it's very devices dependent, right? So you have your web camera, you have your headset, you have your speaker devices, and then you can extend with phones. You can extend with meeting room equipment. You can extend with front of room panels. There's so much going on. And the thing is that Microsoft certifies hardware for this. The advantage here is that there are a lot of vendors that are building hardware that integrates with Microsoft Teams. Some of them is where, for instance, if you have a Teams phone, the hardware is delivered by the vendor, but the software is provided by Microsoft and administered in a Teams admin center. I created a meme around headsets and devices. Like, one does not simply work from home, hashtag, without certified Teams devices. You simply don't. And if you think your built-in camera or your non-certified camera is good, try to switch to a certified camera. Try to switch to a proper camera. It changes the whole behavior of the meeting. And make sure the devices are certified. For instance, when we get back to travel, you have your Bose headset or you have your EPOS headsets for noise canceling, good audio, maybe use it for focus even. So Bose is now certified for Teams, but it doesn't mean that all Bose headsets are certified. You need to use the one with the UC dongle, because that's where the drivers are. That's what they tested on. That's when the buttons start to work. That's when you get the best audio experience as possible. The moment you use your, as you see in the back of my meme here, is that the moment you use your iPhone buds connected through a jack cable into your computer, you're downgrading yourself instantly. And you're sounding much worse. Even though you hear great, that's good. But everyone else in the call like picks up everything that happens in your room. I have a blog post on this as well if you want to dive into that. msunified.net, search for Teams certified devices. Next is Teams can extend with contact centers as well. As we mentioned, there's a separate certification process for that. It's important that you search for that, search for Teams connected contact centers, and you will find the certification lists. And this means that they integrate with Teams, they are certified by Microsoft, and they also have a development that uses the APIs in the correct way. Interestingly enough, at Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft also announced like a contact center Lite built on Power Platform that integrates with Teams and calling in Teams, where you have multimodal call center. You can have chats, you can have audio, you can have video. Very exciting. Let's see what happens with that in 2022. Compliance recording is typically for financial institutions where you have traders that needs to have their calls recorded for compliance reasons. They are required to do that. So instead of like you needing to push recording every time there's a call, there are services that integrates and automatically record your calls, even though it's on audio or video. They will be recorded and stored in a compliant way so that you are compliant. And there's a certification program for that as well to make sure they are handling this in the correct way. And then you have session border controllers. Session border controllers is a way for you to bring your own SIP trunk, bring your own carrier into Microsoft Teams. They can either be deployed in your data center, they can be deployed at a partner and hosted by a partner, or they can even be deployed in Azure, which means that we can deliver a full enterprise telephony solution natively in Teams. I think this people have been asking for this for a very long time. And so session border controllers are like standard-based SIP-based appliances, which you can connect to Microsoft Teams. So what I like about that, it's not a proprietary connection, it's a SIP-based connection, which is a standardized protocol. So the session border controller needs to be certified for Microsoft Teams. So search for that. You'll find all the certified session border controllers, and there are a lot of them. Finally, we will mention that you can also bring in video endpoints into Teams meetings, which means that you break down the technology barriers. As we talked about, telephony breaks down the technology barriers for calling. Cloud video interop breaks down the technology barriers for meetings, which means that you can join from a standard-based SIP-based endpoint and then join into a Teams meeting if you have cloud video interop integration. Then there are multiple vendors that can deliver this as well. Some of them are cloud-based. Some of them you can even deploy in your own data centers. So again, search for certified cloud video interop solutions, and you will find the vendors out there. But yeah, CVI, that's where you can bring other video endpoints into your meetings, break down those technology barriers. And that brings us over to the summary, Martina. So let's walk through the summary of today.
Yeah, and also I was just wondering from Ignite, next time we will join as avatars into the Learn Live session.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Integrated within Teams, right?
Yeah, that's true. So we are at the end of this first slot. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you join us again for the next 3 weeks. So to give you a brief summary, what we have learned today. So first, we described Microsoft Teams core workloads, and then we went through how Microsoft 365 integrated with Microsoft Teams. The next point we talked about was the Microsoft Power Platform and how this integrates with Microsoft Teams. And then we built the architecture, how Microsoft Teams and all the dependencies and limits we have in here. And the last part we had here was certified solutions. And you see, you can certify your app, your devices, you can use certified devices for your scenarios. So we see, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned that, and I hope you did the learning module together with us. And go into there, complete the interactive learning, and explore Microsoft Teams learning.
Absolutely, and you should be ready now to just ace it. And if you move to the next slide, Martina, we have a widget up for the next event. Make sure you reserve the time. We'll talk about plan and deploy Microsoft Teams. We will talk about some best practices around that, our thinking about how we design it. So join us.
Yeah, hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.